and I'm feeling good.
Hello, hello, hello. Sorry about that. It's Mika of Love Inspired Teach E. Welcome to the podcast. Let me get Instagram going. Bear with me. Okay, I think that's going the way it's supposed to. All right. So, welcome to the LITE Firestarters podcast. I almost went to All Star Seafood and Sports today, so shout out to them. It's just, you know, it's always a thing, right? It's always a thing. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. If this is your first time joining the Light Firestarters podcast, hey, I'm glad to have you. You have joined a podcast that goes about speaking on spicy topics related to wellness and lifestyle. Normally, I say it lifestyle and wellness, so let me get it in both ways. But that is what we are on. Bear with me because I just got to make sure to plug this in so that y'all get the full experience. But tonight's topic is actually going to be on, how do you know if you have a good boss? When it comes to your lifestyle, your work life, it impacts you in so many ways because let's face it, you spend more time at work than anywhere else, unfortunately. And 9 times out of 10, like maybe you stay up a lot and you spend a lot of time at home too, but usually even those, most people homebody, which okay, I'll give that to you. But your boss is still a big part of your life. And if you're an entrepreneur or business owner, you are your own boss. And I was just having a conversation with someone about how, it's important to be a good boss and an easy boss. And being a good boss don't typically go hand in hand. So feel free to dispute that with me if you'd like. But that's the topic for today. If you're just now joining, let me tell you who I am. I already told you where you're at. You're at the 2025 Light Firestarters podcast, which is about spicy topics related to lifestyle and wellness. But I'm Tamika Williams. I am the host of the podcast. I'm also the owner of Love Inspired Teachee, otherwise known as Light Consulting, because we've made a branding switch. And we are exclusively a consulting company that also incorporates the podcast that you're watching tonight. And we also do business coaching as well. So, just as far as who I am and what I'm about, I've been doing this podcast for, it's been about 4 years now. 4 years. There was a long break. So we got to acknowledge there was about a full year break in between, but came back, hit the ground running to just talk about things that keep it interesting. And I can share that tonight's topic was somewhat inspired by our leadership, if that's what you want to call it, of the country, or it used to be in a lot of ways a figurehead position, but it's not. But that is the inspiration behind tonight's topic about, how do you know if you have a good boss? Are you in the right work environment? Does leadership even matter these days? Because I swear what's been going on in the world has me wondering if we still believe that it's of critical importance that you know people should be good at their jobs, or do we just want them to be buddy buddy? Do we want them to just look good, not necessarily be experts? What are we trying to do? So there's that. And I knew I had this set up differently. uh a dog saying hello too. So normally you will Okay, I think I fixed it. Sorry for that echo. Technical difficulties. But normally you will find our podcast uh, being recorded live, or it has been done consistently at All Star Seafood and Sports. So I just want to send a special shout out to them because they've been a major supporter of the podcast this past year and have really done a lot of great things to encourage that we have good guests on the show, that we have interesting topics, that we have a lively atmosphere. So I want to factor that in. Uh, let's see what else I got for you guys. Um, bear with me because I want to make sure. Well, we've got the right banners up today. I prepped and it still needed an adjustment. I actually still want to change it. That's the topic. Uh, so did the shout out. If you were a business that wants to sponsor the podcast, feel free to do so. I highly encourage it. Here's all our handles, but also if you want to contact us regarding sponsorships, we're not going to hold you back. Go ahead and do that. You can reach me at hi@loveinspiredteache.com and or go to any of our social media handles, which you can see there. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what makes a good boss. First of all, every work environment needs direction and leadership. Can we start there? That good leadership is important. It's critical to the success of. Can you all see me? Okay. Not really sure what's going on. Hold on. I gotta check and make sure. I can see myself and it looks good, but for some odd reason right now, it's not necessarily because I don't want to get into all the juicy stuff and it can't even be seen. What fun is that? Okay, yeah, I'm good to go. It was weird. I think it's just this other location that's acting funny. We'll work with it. So anyway, leadership. It really boils down to leadership. Is it important? Is it essential? We've all been there where we've had a crappy boss that we tolerate because they must have did something right to get in that role. Right? We agree with that? We don't agree? Sometimes it remains a question mark. At the same time, there are instances where people get promoted not necessarily because of their skill. Sometimes it's nepotism. Nepotism meaning, you're a family member, so you got promoted because of that. But sometimes people get promoted as well to get them off of a team. It's promotion to be rid of a bad employee. It's weird, but it happens. And then those people progress and we all remain in shock at like, how did you get into this job and why do you believe that this is the right way to go about it? Or maybe sometimes people are just going through things and it's impacting their work life. And this is why it's so intriguing that intersection of, hey, mental health matters, mental health is important. It has a ripple effect throughout various aspects of your life. That's why that remains interesting. But can we all agree leadership does matter? You do want someone knowledgeable. You do want someone who is fair, that also wants to see a business succeed. And no matter what industry you're in, if you're in construction, if you're in healthcare, if you're in marketing, if you are in uh, the retail industry, having good leadership, even and not know if the business is going to stay there, if it's going to succeed, if it'll stand the test of time. there have been stories where people who are in these leadership roles, I can't help myself. I have to use the orange guy as an example. Before he became a government in a supposed government leader role, before he was in government, he was on TV being known for firing people. And here in Chicago, he had a reputation for, yes, he could get these big projects financed, but he would do shady things like cut people out at the last minute and basically not honor contracts. So this is someone who's boss level that appears to be succeeding, but when as he's run for government, his flaws have been highlighted. How many times has he filed for bankruptcy? How his HR style of firing people, whether it be justly or not, it, does that really mean he's a great leader? And here's the other rub to all this. There are some management styles that work for some people, but they don't work with others. Just like there's gonna be some people who love the gentleman I'm talking about, and there's gonna be others who are just always scratching their head. Like, how did this happen? Why is this person in this position? Well, what are we gonna do about it? And we're stuck. But at the intersection of it all is you've got to find balance, right? So knowing that, setting those ground rules, how do you know if you have a good boss? Does having a good boss mean that they just make sure that you're given bonuses regularly? Does a good boss know when to fire somebody? Does a good boss know when to keep coaching someone? Does a good boss know what every single employee is doing and has a deep understanding of every single role? Does a good boss have to be someone who climbed the ranks and they if they were at McDonald's, they flip burgers and then they clean the floors, they did it all? Is that a requirement for being a good boss? So it could be subjective, right? There's definitely going to be aspects of a good boss that are going to be subjective, whether it's subjective to the industry, whether it's subjective to where you fall in the food chain, where you fit into the hierarchy. But there's some parts of being a boss that are just fundamentals, that are basics. And that, for me, is critical in determining whether or not there's a good boss. I need a boss that, while they don't have to have like scrub pots and they don't have to have swept floors, I do need for them to. So my career background is in sales and marketing. I've been in sales and marketing for over 20 years. I may not look it, but I have been in sales and marketing for over 20 years. But I need a boss who's led teams, who's led people, who's had success, who has impacted dollars, that understands, while the whatever the product may be, you need to make sure that it's gonna that one, you actually understand what your product is and how it serves other people, and how much of that product do we have to move in order for us to stay afloat. Like, that's what I've needed as a sales and marketing professional. Now, early on, I've had every role I've had has really been impacted by sales and marketing. There's always been a sales element. But let's say, in high school, was it high school? No, in college, when I was just doing data entry, I needed a boss that actually knew how to create a schedule. Needed a boss who knew, as far as basic accounting principles and HR principles, that my paycheck was going to come on time, that everything that I needed submitted was submitted. And if they didn't have the answer, that they were okay saying, I don't know, but I will find out. Let's face it, a bad boss will pretend like they know everything, pretend like they've got it all figured out, and screw up royally. We've all been there where we've had someone who's just done more harm than good, all because they were afraid to just say, I don't have the answer. I don't know, but I'll get back to you. Why is that so wrong? Uh, I haven't figured out why that's so wrong, but it's a reality. So that's what we're talking about. That's where we're at. How do you know you have a good boss? We've talked about what the basics of of being in leadership should entail. We've thrown out the question of like what does it look like? How do you know? So there's that. So we'll take a little bitty commercial break here so I can make sure my throat's not staying parched. Mm. But also, so I can give you the commercial break on not All Star Seafood Sports. I already shouted them out, but I'm also going to do a little commercial break on LITE, which is LITE Consulting, Love Inspire Teach Eat. If anything, you should check out the website is good, but I am more proud of our Instagram. One of the things that went up on Instagram recently was just in coaching. How do you navigate certain spaces, certain instances, but more importantly, do you have the right team that can help you with that? So the reason why I point you that way, if you need any type of coaching, strategy sessions, things like that, like consulting can help you with that. We are going to be revamping the blog, so you'll see more articles that are, your top threes, what makes you more efficient, case studies, things of that nature. So feel free to check out our blog and our services. Uh, but all right, let's get back to what it takes to be a good boss. One of the blessings that I've had, Michaela, can you please move the dog? Julia, come. One of the blessings that I had in my life is that my dad worked for a millionaire. I don't think he was a billionaire, a millionaire. But one of the tidbits that he shared, and I've stated this on the podcast before, is he said he didn't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. He paid the people around him to be smarter than him. And that really struck a chord with me because this gentleman was very successful. He owned a whole baseball team in the city of Chicago. And this was my dad's boss. So, what made him a great leader, though, was just simply recognizing that he needed talented people to surround him. But what I also loved is there's a limitation to everyone's talents. If you are into self-help books, into leadership books, I'm going to age myself because you may or may not know of John Maxwell. John C. Maxwell has written a ton of leadership books. So one of the concepts he talks about is law of the lid. So back in the early 2000s, his books were one of those that were on the hot list, the bestseller list, the trend on what should we be reading for self-improvement. And the law of the lid is just that you're always going to be bumping up against this ceiling, and the more you strengthen yourself and practice yourself, that lid is always going to rise. So the law of the lid is you're only as good as you push yourself. And so Mr. Reinsdorf is who I'm referring to. If you know who Jerry Reinsdorf is, great. But he would talk about how those people that are smarter than him enable him to do his business better. And that is where you're pushing one another. So what I was getting at, though, is that what was great is even though you're hiring talented people, you're still cultivating that talent within them. And that's where the law of the lid comes in too, is because you've got to constantly cultivate those boundaries and push those boundaries so that you expand and grow. And a good boss will do that for you. Now, you might, if you watch the show, you may have seen way back. I got to look what episode it was. I had this voodoo doll about as a voodoo doll against your boss. And because I work for myself, I always found it funny because I would never want to poke myself for the things, but it's like, give me a recognition, give me a raise. These were like the little pinpoints on there. So it is a challenge because the type of person I am, the way I'm driven, I'm not good all the time at giving myself recognition for all that I accomplish and do. For example, the podcast has been consistent. Even though we switched from a weekly format to a bi-weekly format, there has been consistency. We've managed to get guests on, several different guests throughout this year, and in the past it just happens naturally. And there's been a lot more podcasts where it's been more topic driven than guest driven. And it's interesting because guests, for me, I take that as a partnership, and I want their input on what topics they feel comfortable about, because I want to give you a great show. I want to give you quality content, right? um so one of the great things about being your own boss is that there is autonomy, but you also very much have to hold yourself accountable. So when it comes to that doll and being like, did we hit target? Do you show concern? Yes, I can do that. But at the same time, I get that leadership is also got to be about that bottom line. And when you're the employee, you're like, oh, all they care about is how many, if you're a bagger at a grocery store, how many grocery bags did I bag and did I do it efficiently? Or if you are, a PR manager and all your boss cares about is how many clients do you have on your roster? There's the reason for that is the business needs to succeed. And in order for it to succeed, everyone's got to do their part. They've got to do their job. They've got to do it well. And if they're not doing it well, are they coachable? Can you even coach them into doing their job well? Did they just interview well? Possibly. Uh, did you promote them from within and you got to coach them, and you decided to take that investment? There's a lot of different factors that go into this, but ultimately everyone has to work together. And a good leader also knows when to follow. So it totally ties into that thought process of, hey, as the owner of the sports team I was talking about, he didn't want to be the smartest person in the room. He paid other people to be the smartest person in the room. That also meant he knew when to follow. He knew when to leverage his voice and his position on the team, but he also knew when he needed to defer. There's a balance between the collective decision making, when you have your management team meetings and people share their thoughts, but who's the ultimate decision maker? It's always going to be the head honcho. But a good boss is going to be one that's open to ideas, that's willing to weigh the different decisions, but they've also got to know that pulling the trigger can be just as important. So it's interesting. Volunteer positions and being in leadership is similar to being in corporate roles or in business roles and being in leadership, but it's also different because there is the ability in some ways to pass the buck or drag your feet a little bit longer. But even a well-run nonprofit is going to have someone who's going to steer the ship. And ultimately, what it comes down to, as far as knowing you have a good boss is, are they knowledgeable enough to say that their team needs help, that they hired the right or wrong person, and also, what is it going to take to get us where we're going? They have to have that vision. So as far as having a good boss, vision is key. It is absolutely key. Uh, if you've ever been in the subordinate role where you've had a boss that you've just been like, this person can never answer my questions, they can never help me, they don't have any clue what they're doing, and it's obvious. But as soon as like another boss comes around, they use you as their prop. They'll be like, hey, take care of this, show them how this is done, knowing full well that part of why they're asking you to show another leader how it's done is not just because it's your everyday job, but because they forgot how to do it or they don't know how to do it. Let's say they got hired in from a different industry and they've got gaps. But yeah, these are just general points on how to know if you have a good boss. I did not take it the political route intentionally. I started off a little bit there, but we chose a leader who had private sector experience. And let's face it, the private sector operates different than the government sector. And what the saying is that a lot of times the people who are in the government sector are the people who pass. They passed sometimes bare minimum. They could have got C's and D's and they got into those roles. Now, how true that may be, I'd have to do a little bit more research to let y'all know. But as of right now, we're just gonna run with the antidote, okay? But in the business space, in the private sector, it is much more competitive. There's a lot of different variations on how things can be done. You can fundraise differently, you can hire differently, the hiring practices are differently, and they're more varied. So part of what gives the private sector a leg up is that there's some inherent diversity in trying new things. If you've thought about becoming an entrepreneur, you might have looked into micro lending, or you might have been doing a big fundraise and you got to tap into your network. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. But the people who have a vision, who have a level of expertise, I want to say a bare minimum level of expertise, and they also have the foresight to say, hey, we need more help, we need more training. Those are the best leaders. Those are the ones that are going to give you that reassurance that you've got a good boss, you picked the right company, you're on the right team, and they're going to help you succeed. And the even best bosses are going to want not only to help you succeed and see you grow within the company, but they're going to be totally okay with you going off and succeeding in other spaces because they know that the collaboration, that the greater good of all impacts us sometimes in ways that cannot be seen. So that's it on how do you know you have a good boss? I did not have as many jokes because I expect y'all to put that in the comments. If you're catching this, I want you to definitely like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, drop a comment about where you're at, where you're from, what about this you can relate to, what resonates with you. Definitely check out our IG. We are Love Inspired Teach E on for now on Instagram, and then the handles are probably going to be changing. In fact, YouTube's handle already changed to LITE Consulting, so factor that one in as well. But we're switching formats. I'd love for you to continue with us on our journey as we continue to make that shift from being the podcast that does talk about anything and everything under the sun. I'm sorry, the blog that talked about anything and everything under the sun, because we want you to lean into what works best for you, as we pivoted into being uh, um, a tool for me sharing my sales and marketing expertise. But the podcast gets to be a space where we really hone in on the spicy topics related to lifestyle and wellness as a way to continue to help not only our clients, but everyone else that loves to use the social media space that we want to serve those around us. So hopefully this podcast was of use to you. I love any feedback you may have. I I have to say that I enjoy podcasting and I push through to make sure that there is that consistency that I mentioned. I definitely want to support other small businesses. So if you want to come on the podcast, hit me up. I'd love to have you as a guest host with me. We can talk about, like I said, topics that resonate with you. As long as we can keep it spicy and fun, it makes the podcast worth it. So thanks again for tuning in. I love y'all and have a great night. Bye.